It's been a while since I've done a standalone Triple P video, and I'm not talking about one where I shoehorned a Triple P in the video like I did with Candace Owens when she had got those that strike on her channel for what she said about Hall T, because that was like an unexpected Triple P that I inserted in there because of her cancellation with that Blexit event that she was supposed to have in New York. But I'm just talking about a straight up Triple P. And ironically, the one that I did, the Triple P that I did do, the last one I did, had to do with the flops opening weekend box office numbers and how horrible they were. Well, here I am again doing another Triple P, full straight out, on The Flash again, and it's basically to address that this movie was so bad and performed so horribly at the box office that WB is going to lose about $200 million behind this, and it has now been rated as one of the worst. As a matter of fact, it has become the worst flop in studio history. Out of every movie that Warner Brothers has released in their film's history, this was the worst performing one on a domestic and a global scale. So I'm going to read this article coming from The Direct that was posted July 2nd, 2023. Andy Muschietti's The Flash is currently projected to become Warner Brothers' biggest flop in studio history, following an overwhelmingly positive word-of-mouth marketing campaign fueled by comments from actor Tom Cruise, author Stephen King, and DC Studios co-CEO James Gunn. The Flash is bombing at the domestic and global box office. Starring Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, and Sasha Calle, Warner Brothers' latest DC film earned less than $100 million at the domestic box office to date. Now keep in mind, the movie came out on June 16th, 2023. I'm recording this video on July 4th, 2023, and this article was posted 2 days before this. And they said this movie has yet to earn $100 million domestically. Keep in mind, this movie cost $200 million to make. Stumbling into its third weekend, The Flash is losing 1,538 North American movie theaters, making the chance for a miraculous recovery even lower. Box office analyst Luis Fernando recently observed that if The Flash's poor performance keeps up, it will lead the film to lose Warner Brothers more than $200 million, which makes me even beg again to wonder just how bad was that Batgirl movie when they shelved it. Now, mind you, the Batgirl movie cost less to make than this did. I think it cost like $90 million. But they said it was so bad that it was deemed unwatchable, and they ended up shelving the project. But they kept this one floating around, and this one actually made them lose a whole bunch of money. Like I said in my previous video when I did the Triple P, I had gave my scenarios as to why I believe this movie was flopping. So I'm not going to do that here. Y'all can go and check that out and see what I had to say about that. But let's be real here. I can say this right here. The main reason why this movie was a flop is because of the title character, The Flash. When your main character, when your main star is the reason for your movie flopping, that's a problem. Fernando mentioned that The Flash's hefty $150 million promotional budget may not even recoup by box office earnings, and WB would have lost less money releasing it on Max or not releasing it at all. So where would this stack up against other massive Warner Brothers flops in the past? Due to the global pandemic and WB's decision to release all of his film day and date in theaters and on HBO Max, several recent films have been big losers for the studio. Directly impacted by the pandemic, Wonder Woman 1984 lost an estimated $137 million, while its DC counterpart, The Suicide Squad, which was met with great critical reception, lost $120 million. Two other recent flops day and date releases were The Matrix Resurrections, which was absolutely horrible. If y'all saw my review, y'all know I hated that movie. Starring Keanu Reeves and LeBron James' Space Jam: A New Legacy remake. The former lost $130 million, while the latter vanished $111 million for WB. So as you can see, WB has been releasing a lot of flops lately. It's gone beyond just The Flash doing horrible, even though they're just saying that The Flash lost the most money, but they're going down the recent ones and saying how much they've lost. Now, the crazy part about it is that granted, a lot of the, and I'm gonna just throw it in here for the contextual purposes, over at Marvel, you know, with the MCU, People can complain about saying like about these movies being this, that, and the third, but at the end of the day, they're going to make some kind of bank. I mean, when's the last time you really saw, well, I don't really say when's the last time you saw a Marvel movie flop. I would have to say probably most likely Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but even that movie performed better than The Flash. Two other, I already read that part. Let me keep on going. Warner Brothers also suffered a couple of pre-pandemic flops during the 2010s. 2017 King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, starring Charlie Hunnam, lost the studio approximately $153.2 million after earning less than $149 million worldwide. The epic space failure starring Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis, Jupiter Ascending, and trust me, that movie was horrible as well. Like, that movie bored the hell out of me. Lost WB roughly $120 million, earning a bleak $47.4 million domestically and $183.9 million total worldwide. For comparison's sake, The Flash would be a crushing loss for WB, a historic failure even when adjusted for inflation akin to Disney's John Carter catastrophe. Not adjusting for inflation, here's a better look at how The Flash's potential loss will stack up against other WB flops. So they have The Flash, $200 million estimated, King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, $153.2 million, Wonder Woman 1984, $137 million, The Matrix Resurrections, $130 million, Jupiter Ascending, $120 million, The Suicide Squad, $120 million, and Space Jam: A New Legacy, $111 million. All of those movies were in the 100 millions. The Flash was the only one in the 200 millions as far as a loss. So that's why they said this would be a huge loss for the studio. But then again, like I said, I don't feel bad because a lot of people kept saying recast Ezra Miller, preferably with the actor who played the Flash on the television show. He basically carried that show for 9 seasons. I think it was 9 seasons, 8 or 9 seasons, but I didn't watch not one episode of The Flash because it wasn't really appealing to me, but a lot of people said that they really loved that show up until the series finale. I had heard a lot of people say that the series finale was a bit lackluster, and I don't know why a lot of shows are lacking when it comes to their final seasons or their finales. Look at Game of Thrones final season for example of how not to do a final season for a show that had so much build up. But a lot of people were saying cast the actor who played the Flash on the television show in place of Ezra Miller, but they just refused to do it. I'm willing to bet if they would have did that, it would have made more money just on that alone. What they should have did was took a page out of what Sonic did. If y'all remember, the original Sonic trailer for the first movie came out and people did not, including myself, like the presentation of how Sonic looked in that teaser trailer. So what they did was they ended up pushing the release date back a couple of months because it was supposed to come out in 2019, and then they fixed how Sonic was supposed to look and it turned out phenomenal. And the movie made bank not only because of nostalgia purposes, but because they listened to the fans and went back and pushed the date back. They probably lost some money by doing it, but it was worth it because they recouped it anyway. And decided, you know what, let's go ahead and fix this, and the rest is history. The first movie made bank, and I think the second one did more than the first one. So if they would have just listened, and that was a digital thing that they had to do. So I'm willing to bet it probably was a little bit more technical. I could be wrong. But if they would have just listened to the fans and just recasted them, then, it is what it is. But see, I told y'all Ezra Miller has the Trinity on his side. PC, he's part of them folks, and he's in the Academy. That thing is like Teflon Don. It is very, very undefeated. And that shows it right there. But his presence helped to destroy the box office for this movie that could have had potential to be great. But then I heard some other things that was wrong with this movie too. But at the top of that list for everybody was him. So a lot of people weren't turning out for him. So the thing is, the movie could have still made money even with all its other flaws, but him just being there is what ruined it. And as far as I'm concerned, Warner Brothers and the people who were at the head of WB before James Gunn got there, who was all for leaving Ezra Miller in and dealing with all of his crap, they got to hold this L. They have no one else to blame but themselves. The article goes on to say This is a painful reality for a company that was confident this would be a hit after 2 lukewarm performances by Black Adam and Shazam Fury of the Gods. Now here's the crazy part. Black Adam, if y'all saw the triple P that I did on this, made more money in its first weekend than The Flash did, and that was considered a flop. Now the next question they're asking is very pinnacle considering DC's next movie, which is, will Blue Beetle and Aquaman 2 release in theaters? Now my thing is this, why would they release Aquaman 2 after Blue Beetle, considering that Blue Beetle is supposed to be under this new DC universe and Aquaman 2 is under the old one? Wouldn't it make more sense to release Aquaman 2 first and then Blue Beetle? I never understood the release dates for that one. That one's kind of a mystery and kind of weird to me as well. And I, for one, am not going to check out Aquaman 2 because I know Amber Heard is going to be in it. Albeit I really enjoyed the first one. The first one was really good and I was looking forward to the second one. Then she had to go around and do the stuff that she did and to being the person that she is. And I said, if she's anywhere near this movie, I'm not watching it. And apparently she filmed some scenes with it. They don't want to take her out of it. Well, I'm not going to pay to go see it. And I have a feeling that she's going to be the one that's going to ruin that movie. And then because that movie is still attached to the old DC, which is still attached to where the Flash was at, a lot of people still not going to pay attention to that either, because it's like, what's the point? It has no continuity after that. It's done. Now Blue Beetle might actually have a chance, but then again, because the Flash was so horrible, it's kind of iffy. But one thing that could hurt it, again going back to their casting choices, is George Lopez. A lot of people in the Mexican or the south of the Borderian community do not rock with George Lopez like that. I forgot he has said some things in the past and a lot of people was very upset with him and they don't like him. And I was sitting here saying to myself, well, they could have, based on the trailer that I saw, they could have casted anybody to play that part. That looks like a no-brainer. They made it seem like it was so technical, but I guess they said they wanted to have another big name there on top of the guy who's playing Blue Beetle, who's a part of this cast of a show called Cobra Kai. Never watched it, but it's an extension of the Karate Kid. Haven't watched it, but I heard it's a really good show. But I guess they needed someone else in there that was big enough to sell the movie, and they got George Lopez. But I don't know how that's going to work because, again, a lot of people in that community don't like George Lopez. So I don't know how that's going to work, but I mean, I guess we'll see. It says these are the last 2 DC films of 2023 and the final WB superhero flicks greenlit by the past regime. Aquaman and Lost Kingdom will hit theaters 5 years following its massive $1 billion 2018 hit starring Jason Momoa. I highly doubt it's going to reach that billion this time. I don't think it's going to come close. Releasing Aquaman 2 directly to Max or scrapping it entirely is a far-fetched idea. There's still likely some audience for this, one bigger than the Flash's, WB hopes. Blue Beetle, however, has been on a completely different course to theatrical release. Originally meant for a direct-to-streaming release, the origin story starring Zolo, and I'm probably pronouncing his name incorrectly, Mariduena, may need to revert to plan A. A wide release is expensive not only to play in theaters across the globe, but the marketing dollars spent so audiences know the movie's release. And that's interesting too, because it's only been one trailer that's been released for this movie. In case anybody didn't know or cared, there's only been one trailer. I think it released back in April. The movie is slated to come out in August next month, and they haven't released another trailer for this movie. I haven't really seen this movie be promoted like that since the first trailer came out. So it's like they're not marketing this movie well already, which means it seems to me that you already have some doubts, and they were probably planning on releasing something around the time of The Flash coming out, since that will be their next DC film. But because The Flash performed so poorly, it's like, we may need to scale back. So now I can see why in this article it's saying revert to plan A and releasing it straight to Max, and then they can save them a lot of money. And hopefully not a loss. I mean, it's a risk at this point to release that movie after this movie performed so horrifically. And the thing is, for all we know, the movie could be very good. It could be way better than The Flash, but it's still a risk because The Flash cost them $200 million to make, and they're losing $200 million. Again, the movie didn't even cross the $100 million threshold, and it's been out for 3 weeks. A wide release, I already read that part right there. The Flash's marketing budget was treated as if it was going to be one of 2023 Summer Smash hits. I didn't see it. I'm gonna be honest. And on top of that, remember, June was a packed month. June had movies stacked to the brim. Like, it was a movie coming out like every week. I didn't see The Flash making that much money, especially because of course, the main character, the main actor. But because it was around so many other films, I didn't see it coming. The biggest movie to come out of June was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, an animated film. That was the biggest movie to come out in June. And I didn't even expect that to make that much money, considering it was stacked up. As a matter of fact, when Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse came out, it was #1 in its first weekend. Then it dropped to #3 in the second weekend, which was the weekend that The Flash came out. Then it crawled back up to #1 in its third weekend. That's crazy. It's very rare that movies nowadays do that, but it did it. So kudos to that film, because that was honestly, that was one of the best movies I saw so far this year. WB can't afford to pour any more money into Blue Beetle, a complete unknown that will need incredibly positive word of mouth to perform admirably at the August box office, which is very true. I had no clue who Blue Beetle was. When it comes to like DC characters, you know, your usual, your Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, the whole Justice League, that lineup, that original lineup. But I didn't know who Blue Beetle was. They said he appeared in a few cartoons back in the day, but I could have very well been watching it and did not know who he was. So it's an unknown character. It would need all the push that it can possibly get. Otherwise, that movie's going to just fall by the wayside. Like I said, The Flash is a known character, and it was a movie that had other characters around him that people knew. Batman, Supergirl. You had 2 different Batmans. You had a Supergirl. You had more than one Flash. You had General Zod. You had all these well-known characters around this character that a lot of people know, and it still didn't perform well. Now, what will be interesting is if they do take the risk and release Blue Beetle, and Blue Beetle does better than the Flash. You're talking about an unknown character that not a lot of people know. They don't really know his origin like that. They don't know any of his villains or his enemies or what he's all about. Does better than a character that people have known for years. What would that tell you? But again, it's still a risk for them to take if they go that route, because of how poorly The Flash did at the box office. The Flash is literally questioning the future of DC right now. And keep in mind, James Gunn is now pushing this Superman legacy film that's supposed to come out, I think, in 2025. It's looking really bleak right now. It's looking really bleak, and it's crazy because you had James Gunn over at the MCU do his last stint over there with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which was a very good ending to that chapter. Did phenomenal numbers, number-wise. Then he comes over to DC, and granted, because The Flash is not his film, but he's now basically their Kevin Feige. And this is how it starts under, like, even with you over here, even though The Flash is not your film. But Blue Beetle is kind of technically under him, so to speak. It's not his film because he's not directing it, but it's the first one under the new DC slate. Now people are like, I don't know. But we'll see, because the movie comes out, I think, August 18th. So we'll see what happens. DC fans may just need a reset, which they're getting on June 11, 2025, when Superman Legacy, starring David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan, hits theaters. And it says The Flash is currently playing in theaters. I have a feeling that it'll be out of theaters really soon, because, you know, they got that 45-day window. But yeah, it's like I said, I don't feel anything at all for the failure of this film. And it's sad because initially, and I remember telling y'all this when I talked about Ezra Miller a couple years ago, I had wanted to see this movie, you know, but his behavior and the lack of accountability that he's supposed to have. Yeah, I was like, nah, you know what? It's not happening. Because when you see all these other actors, and yes, I'm going there with black actors. Look at what, you know, with Will Smith and, you know, the whole Chris Rock and Will Smith incident that happened shortly around this right here. And this happened afterwards. Will Smith can't go to the awards for 10 years. Not that he probably even cares. You know, Jonathan Majors in his situation, he's in court right now. And now, you know, with Ezra Miller, and y'all know that I talked about Ezra Miller in my live stream recently, the one that I just recently did. He's getting all the protections, but I will say this: if you don't want your movie to tank, don't put Ezra Miller in your film. Nowhere near it. I don't care if it's even for voiceover work. Don't do it. It's been proven that Ezra Miller is box office toxicity. He is box office poison. He is not good at all. If he was candy, he would rot your teeth. That's all I can really say. WB, Warner Brothers, DC, y'all gotta take and hold this very heavy L, because all of this could have been avoided if you would have just got rid of this character. And I'm not talking about the Flash, I'm talking about the actor playing him, and just casted the actor from the show. I'm almost certain he probably would have been down to do it. And what's crazy is, even though I didn't watch the show, many of you may or may not know, but they had a crossover thing, because that's one thing that the CW shows at one point, they were doing the crossover things, like with the Crisis series and whatnot. I don't know if this is attached to it, but there was one episode of The Flash where Ezra Miller version of Barry Allen and the actor from the show actually were in the same episode. So there was some crossover there. But here we are. And the thing is, a lot of people had preferred the actor from the show to do him to play the Flash in the movie, even before there was a Flash movie on the books. We're talking about going back to the Justice League back in 2017. A lot of people weren't vibing with Ezra Miller then. They were willing to give him a chance, but they weren't really vibing with him like that. And then after all the stuff he did, many people had wrote him off, as they should have. But they kept him on, and now they're taking a loss. It is what it is.